Joe, welcome. Glad to have you here. I know we chatted recently, so it's fun. I feel like we just chatted and we're like, oh, we should have you on the podcast because there's so much good stuff that we were able to exchange. And I think what was most interesting to me, or one of the things that really kind of like was like light bulb was just you are able to create communities, how you've been able to do that, how you're fostering relationships and partnerships with all the things you're involved with, which we're going to get into. Just a brief introduction for folks that are not familiar with Joe or Pro Advisor Suite, which he co-founded. He also specializes in advisor tech consulting. He does all kinds of got tons of advice on marketing strategies, Excel, all kinds of technology platforms for especially the advisor community. So, Joe, I don't want to take the words out of your mouth. Why don't you share a little bit more about your background, how you got to where you got to before we get into this whole idea of communities, how you built them, so on and so forth. So, over to you.
All right. Yeah. So I thought about this question and I thought I would start with like high school. So I started getting into trading, um, trading stocks, following investments kind of thing
Yeah.
in high school. Um, and so when I turned 18, because you had to be 18 to actually trade with an account, I opened a TD Ameritrade account, and then started trading. And weekly, daily, I was trading too much. um, so then it happened to also be like around 2008.
Mm.
I remember pretty clearly because I just finished high school and I was going to college, and I went to the West Point, the military academy,
Oh, so
um,
cool.
and we
Got
had.
got Navy back. My husband's Navy, so there you go. Shout out on that side of things. So military, but go ahead, keep going.
We had 6 weeks of basic training, and you're like, no internet, no cell phone, no access whatsoever to the outside world. So when basic training was over, we all got to go to like an officer's house on base, call our families, check the internet. And I remember checking my stocks and, after 6 weeks and then, being kind of disappointed that, things were going down.
Yeah.
Um, so then fast forward a little bit, I would like check my stocks in between classes in the hallway. Um, so that was fun, and that's something kind of remember about that time there. I ended up leaving West Point after about a year and a half, finishing my degree at WVU.
Hmm.
Um, I spent about 6 years doing like real estate, residential contracting, property management, and then I got a job in accounts payable. And
Uh-huh.
so this I kind of feel like is when I first got interested in data and Excel and
Yeah.
dashboards and all that stuff. So I was on the accounts payable team, the executive team. They wanted insights that we just didn't have. Like all of our accounting was backward looking. What has happened, what
Yeah.
have we paid, what we
Forward.
received.
Mhm.
Um, so I've focused on like how can we get insights into the future, and also like what data would be really useful for them that we're not tracking. Uh,
Mhm.
so I found that to get started tracking data, you just start tracking, and then over time, you'll have something worthwhile
Yes.
um, to share. So going forward a little bit from there, I got a job working for a CPA who also did investments on the side. So I was CSA paraplanner there, and that's where I'd say I got into advisor tech. So I started following Kitz's and the Kitz's fintech map. I
Yes.
actually printed it out. It was like 4 feet wide on my wall next to my desk. Um,
Great testimonial for that tool.
for sure. So I was like circling companies that we were using, and I was circling companies that I wanted to be using.
Wow.
Kind of got excited about tech and operations. Still thought I wanted to be a financial advisor at that point, but that's kind of where I got interested in tech, and that kind of thing. So then I ended up working as a virtual CSA for 6 different RIAs.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
And so even more, I got to see like 6 different tech stacks. So not just what one advisor is doing, but like what are 6 different companies using, and gave me a really broad experience in different tech, different advisor tech options. So
Cool.
then from there, I pretty active on LinkedIn. I met Kate Gian, who's the founder of Simplicity Ops. And so that the past couple of years, I've been working with her, helping to grow Simplicity Ops, and that's all about CRM consulting. So then from there, a couple months ago, my co-founder approached me and was like, "Hey, I've got this idea for basically like a Costco for advisor tech. So they pay a membership to join, and then they get access to all these discounts.
Right.
Um, so this is what I'm working on now, which is called Pro Advisor Suite. The Costco for advisor tech.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to think about it. I also really can appreciate what you're saying. You're saying you're working for, was it six different firms or something of that sort?
Yeah,
On this end, we work with, I don't even know how many accounts you've been a part of our conversations, but you really see the inside of all kinds of things going on, and you can bring a kind of light, right, to help people get ahead. So, um, tell me more about, because you have seen kind of the inside of all of this, like, I mean, where are you at? And I know you're working to really kind of build communities and help to share and harness knowledge. So tell us a little bit about that side of things and why you've taken that approach. I guess if you want to call it for marketing or for relationship building or what have you. So yeah, we'll spin into that side of things.
sure. Let's see. So going back to like when I was working in accounts payable, I was really into personal finance blogs. And so there was this directory. This is interesting because it's a directory, which we'll talk more about later. But there
Right.
was a directory of like over 1,000 personal finance blogs and all the different writers running the blogs.
Oh,
And they track their net worth. So like all these different personal finance blog writers would like publish their net worth, and you could track it month over month.
right.
But I got interested in that because it was a way to interact with people on a very niche subject. I think
Right.
that that's something online communities allow you to do, is to go really deep on a specific subject. Like
Mm,
within my city, if I wanted to hang out with some people and talk about advisor tech, like it would be really hard to find
right.
people passionate about advisor tech. But on the internet, it's a lot easier because you can pull from a lot wider base of people, and go deeper on a subject.
Yeah, tell us more about how you're curating these communities and then how you're building out the communities, right? Because that's a whole thing into itself, like to be able to find people that want to nerd out on Interact's topic, right? Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what platforms are you using? How are you inviting people to join? How are you creating just conversations on these platforms?
Sure. Yeah. So the main platform I'm using now is called School. It's skool.com. And I found out about School. So Sam Ovens used to own consulting.com.
Mhm.
And he was big in like the online course space. So he would teach people how to take their knowledge, turn it into a course, and then sell it.
Mhm.
And so what he found over time was that people would come for the content, the courses, but then they would stay to hang out with all the other people that were taking the course.
Right.
So he basically realized that the community was even more valuable than the content, the course itself.
Mm.
So he built this platform, School, which has a great content system, learning management system.
Yeah.
But he's really focused on the community aspect of building these communities, which is a great way to chat with other members, a great feed, a great calendar. He added leaderboards so that people can you can track like who's the top person in the community in the past month or week or so I really like the School platform, and that's the one that I've been building on. um, Using leaderboards I think has been really helpful because when we launched RA operators, so this is a community we started February of this year, so February of this year.
Pretty
um,
recently. Yeah.
yeah, we just crossed 500 members, so
Congratulations. Yeah, that's
about, yeah, thank you.
yeah,
It took about 9.5 months to cross 500. So I know you were interested in like how long does it take to build a community.
right.
But basically, I mean, I think it's like any kind of marketing. You tell people about it, and you tell people about it in a way that's interesting for them.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, we shared about it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We shared about it in our email newsletter. We did a giveaway. I think giveaways are really cool when you're starting a community because it just creates some urgency or some competition. So we're
Mhm.
giving away 10 books each month, to the top 10 people on the leaderboard. So that was pretty fun.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually the question I was going to ask is like, how are you building it out. So it sounds like just through your various networks and channels, have you been manually inviting each person one by one? Have you been doing direct messages? Has it just kind of been word of mouth? How have you gotten it going? I mean, because it's like, it's one thing where you like you see a community after it's built, but just like getting it off the ground is a ton of work, right? And I don't think people even realize like, oh, I've got this great idea. I could create X, but then to build it out, it's a whole thing. So yeah, like what do you think got you the most traction to get to where you are today?
I think so. We did have the jumping off point of like our LinkedIn network. We had a LinkedIn page and our email list. I would say like LinkedIn and email are two really important ways to build. So we're going to talk about like community on a platform, but like
Mhm.
community in general as well.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
LinkedIn is like rented media. So like, you've got all your connections, but LinkedIn could go away and you could lose all that.
Mhm.
Um, Email in a way is like owned media. Like you can have a list of all the email addresses and no one's going to take that away from you.
Yeah.
So and community is kind of somewhere in the middle. Like it is on another platform. So in a way, like they own our community, but at the same time, we have a list of everyone that's there, and it's kind of our own little, I'd say like our own
Mhm.
little room on the internet in a way.
Yes. So you've built this out, you've leveraged your other communities or networks, it sounds like, to then sort of push content there. And then how do you keep the chatter going, right? Because stuff can kind of pick up and then it goes on and whatever, but how do you keep it alive and keep it interesting?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I guess I use a mixture of methods. Sometimes it's just random. Like I'll have an idea or I see something somewhere and I'll post about it or share it. Um,
Mhm.
One thing that's worked very well in this community is asking people like what they're using for their website or what they're using for their CRM, or what they're using for, you know, email marketing. Because
That's
that's something I usually,
tangible.
yeah, I usually
Yeah.
do it in a poll format. And so people can fill out the poll and then I can compare like the poll results to one of the advisor tech survey results.
Mhm.
Um, and it also just becomes a resource. So another thing that's really cool about school is that the search bar at the top like searches across everything. So you can search
Mhm.
across the members, you can search across the courses, you can search across all the posts. Um,
Love a
so
good search bar.
yeah,
Like, and then we use Asana a lot and they have incredible search. It goes across all the comments and all kinds of things like that. Google's got great, but that's one of, I think, a key, and oddly enough, a really good key component for user experience. So,
yeah.
it's important to call that out. So super interesting. I mean, for your at Out and About, part of our mission statement is around building communities. I think I shared this the first time that we talked about, we connected. And so this is really interesting to hear this idea of like fostering those communities, especially in an online space, right? As you said, your kind of data set or your pool of folks to be able to pull from is much wider right in theory. So, and in practice. So can we talk a little bit more about, because I feel like you've got such a nag about just finding these like needles in a haystack, right? I know we chatted about like list and being able to build audiences and kind of learning from what other people are doing, not just in school as a platform, but like LinkedIn as a platform and other social platforms. Tell me a little bit about these lists that you've been building out and what are you learning from them?
Sure, interesting. Um, so I noticed like on LinkedIn, someone would post and say something like, "Hey, I'm looking for a recruiter," or "I'm looking for a transition consultant."
Right.
Um, and those posts tended to do really well. So like people would hop on and they'll start making recommendations. And so it became a way to kind of catalog all those people, but also promote those people.
Hmm.
Um, so I would take some of those posts and like save all the list of people that were, transition consultants, for example, and put it in a spreadsheet. And then I could make a post about it,
Ah,
like
yes.
list all of them in one post, and it becomes a resource for people to visit. So it can be a way to promote the people in the list that
Right.
you're collecting. It can also be a way, it's a resource for people that need that information.
And how are you finding these people? Is it like, are you searching in LinkedIn and their search from like hashtags, or is it just because you've built up your LinkedIn community enough that you're starting to see patterns?
That's
Articles
interesting.
you're reading? Yeah, I'd be curious to know how you're, finding this group or these groups.
So there's this idea out there, like using other people's audiences to grow your audience.
Right, right.
Um, so I saw someone post about that, and I called it like the niche 100 list. So like go find 100 people that are already serving the audience that you're targeting,
Right.
um, and then like engage with them, comment on their posts, ask to be on their podcasts, ask
Mhm.
to write a blog post for them. Um, but so I went and built like a niche 100 list for myself, and so I was like, who are the 100 people that are big in my space. And so then the list, that list in particular, just kind of kept growing from there. And
Yeah.
now I'm tracking around like 300 different people in that list. And then, seeing how their followers are growing over time, or seeing who's like growing the fastest.
Yeah.
Um, Pretty fun.
That's right. Matt over at Proudmouth talks about a lot of momentum marketing, right? And it's just sort of it's that over time and it's that kind of volume that you ride those coattails, right? So that's no, it totally makes sense, and it's part of building communities and relationships, and I think just good old fashioned like relationship building, right? I mean, not to be play on words, but out and about, right? Like literally getting out there, right? And being able to talk with people and build those connections is like, I don't think you can break that away from business development. So that's interesting that you're cultivating that and then you're kind of serving that up for other people to utilize. Are there any kind of best practices or trends that you've seen with folks where they've maybe made it on that list because of a number of followers, or maybe there's something that they're doing, like they're always posting with I don't know, a photo or a certain set of hashtags or reposting. Is there any kind of thing that you're noticing that makes you go, huh, that's a takeaway that, you've maybe applied into your own marketing things that you're doing on a day to day?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's consistency is one. I mean, if you look anywhere, it's like be
Yep.
consistent. Um, post daily, post weekly, and when you post, like be consistent in the kind of content that you're posting.
Hmm.
um, like if you post about something random, and then you post about your business, and then you post about something random, like that may not
Align.
do as well. Yeah, for sure. I think another thing I'm noticing is that people, if someone is on a podcast of someone with a much much larger network, like their follower count will jump. uh,
Yes, we see that too. I know.
yeah.
It's that whole coattails thing. Yes. Yep.
So there's I mean, Michael Kitts is a pretty well-known example in this space, but like when someone is on his podcast, like the amount of interest that they get in whatever they do for like months afterward is just way up.
Hmm.
Um, so it's really interesting.
It is really interesting. That's right. It's being able to kind of get there. And we'll talk too, because sometimes you hear folks, I want to be in the New York Times, I want to name drop, like enter it, right? But I think it's also just a reminder of you start where you're at, right? And you start to build it. And it's that momentum, again, momentum market. You build it and you build it and you build it. And it's those pieces that then grow so that it creates other bigger opportunities, so that those bigger opportunities um, they come more fluidly. So um, I don't know. This is such a fun topic. So, okay. So I want to just get back to kind of the data sets and measuring. Is there anything in particular that you've noticed over time in building communities and building your own platforms that you think are things worth measuring that you put in the data set as like a must-have when trying to assess, I'll call it progress, marketing qualified leads, so on and so forth?
Okay, that feels like a broad question. Do you mind
Could be,
narrowing
yes.
it slightly?
Um, so like if you were going to say, I'm going to create a community, right? What would be an indicator, potential KPI for success if your community is successful or not, right? Is it, number of leads? Is it, gosh, is it conversations that are happening? Is it people that are in there that have a volume of followers? Is it just, I don't know. What are you looking for that you feel like would say, okay, this is getting us closer to enter X goal?
Sure. So I think it's easy whenever tracking something to just pick the top number. So it's like number of members in the community is an easy one. For engagement, you can do something like monthly active users. So like there might be 200 people in a community, but only 75 are logging in on a monthly basis.
Mhm.
So you can track your active users along with like your total users. I
Right.
think also like tracking like when celebrities join your community in a way. I mean, not real celebrities, but like celebrities in your
In the
industry.
community, yeah. Celebrities in that community or that kind of space. So totally, it's a fair word. Yeah. Not like
Uh,
Hollywood celebrities, or could be, I guess, but yeah, go ahead.
so yeah, I always get excited when like someone that has a larger following joins one of my communities. I think that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I think also just you can feel how engaged people are. I mean, as people post, or another one is like if you're the owner of the community and you're doing the majority of the posting, like
Right.
that's typical. But when you start to see like members in the community doing more and more posting, I think that's a good sign that people are getting more engaged and more interested in coming to the community as a resource to ask their questions.
Yeah, actually, so we were talking about this right before the call. You were saying like, because I was saying like, oh yeah, I got those emails right for because in school you get email notifications that then tell you, hey, so and so liked your stuff or posted or reminders that the platform exists. And you were talking about how you have other members that say the same thing, right? But they may or may not be engaged. And I was sharing how we wrote an article in Advisor Perspectives that was all about social listening, right? Is that there's a lot of people that watch what's going on, but they may not actually engage, comment, like, share, so on and so forth. And what's your experience with that kind of social listening side of things too?
Sure. I mean, multiple people have messaged me like out of the blue that I have never seen comment or like any of my content and been like, I love what you're posting. And I have this specific question. Um, it's really interesting. So like even if you're posting and you're only getting a few likes or no comments over and over and over, there's still people seeing it. And I still think it's worth putting your content out there, even if it doesn't feel like you're getting a lot of engagement.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your point earlier too about just consistency, right? Sometimes I think folks with marketing is like, okay, this is a great idea. Let's get it going, and then it's like 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, it's kind of like that momentum it just melts away. And so part of that is just that consistent voice, consistent positioning, consistent topics. So super great. Okay, well, we're about ready to wrap up here. This has been a really great conversation. Anything else you want to throw out that you think would be helpful for folks? It's a takeaway.
Yeah, so I wrote down two things. I think one of them is just have fun. Like when you're creating content, it should be something that you care about, that you enjoy writing or enjoy talking about. I think that really helps you be consistent over the long haul. Like if you're forcing yourself to write or record or about topics or something you're not that interested in, like that can be pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is just so I started tracking people's follower counts that are growing rapidly. So like they could only have 200 followers, but like if they add 50 followers, that's a pretty big percentage increase.
Right, right.
So I started tracking those people alongside the people that have, like 10, 20, 30,000 followers
Yes.
as a way to highlight people that are putting in the effort, I guess.
Yeah.
So there could be
That's
someone that's
yeah.
growing. Yeah, go ahead.
It's almost like don't ignore someone that doesn't have, I don't know, 5,000 followers, like enter whatever threshold, because you could also be part of that story, part of that growth story for others that do have that, um, that are starting to pick up at a faster pace, or just honestly be able to share or support or what have you. You don't know. Followers doesn't always indicate success. So, um, but it does, I guess, an indicator of volume. So a noise to a certain
Sure.
degree. But well, thank you again, Joe, for your time and for sharing a bit more. And it's fun, not only learn about how you've been able to build communities. I know we didn't get into as much about Advisor or Pro Advisor Suite, but I will make sure to include links below. And thank you again for your time and conversation.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to be on this.
Absolutely.